From Wish TV and the All Indiana Podcast Network, this is the News 8 Daily 8 Podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update.
Hi, this is Kylie Conway, and this is your News 8 Daily 8 for Wednesday, May 11th. We're going to start with some cloud cover this morning. Then the skies are going to clear out. Might see an isolated shower and storm or two possible any point in the day. Near record high temperatures will be in store, with numbers rising into the mid to upper 80s. Indy's record high for tomorrow is 89 degrees. A shooting across the downtown Indianapolis Canal wounds 5 people, 3 of them women. It happened about 12:20 this morning. Police say 2 officers on bicycles heard gunshots near the Colts Place base off of Walnut Street. Officers found 5 victims, all who'd been shot. Police say 4 of the people shot were adults. Another is 17 years old. At least 3 of the victims are women. Police say everyone involved is stable, some with injuries considered minor. According to IMPD, 2 groups of people on opposite sides of the water started a shootout during an argument. Police say some victims had their children with them, and they believe one person involved was walking their dog. Officers say people who live in the area and saw what happened are over it, the crime and recklessness of others.
It is warming up, and it's obvious people cannot control themselves on a warm night in Indianapolis. You know, the canal used to be a real nice place to come down, bring your family and walk at night. Not anymore. We have a lot of witnesses because the people that live here are fed up. They're fed up with what's going on, and they have cameras, and they pay attention, and they tell us, and they talk to us.
So far, police haven't found the person responsible. They do think the shooting was a targeted incident and say that there's no ongoing risk to the public. Police want witnesses to come forward after 2 men were shot at an apartment complex near Washington Park. IMPD says officers found 1 victim at the Blackburn Terrace Apartments around 11:10 last night. 4 minutes later, officers responded to the gas station at 38th and Oxford, where they found the second victim. Police think that man got a ride to the gas station after he was shot in the apartment complex parking lot. IMPD says both men are stable at the hospital. An escaped inmate is now back in Alabama after being captured in Evansville. Casey White made his first court appearance late last night. The judge told White he will face a charge for escape on top of the capital murder charge for a 2015 stabbing that first put him in jail. White was then sent back to the same jail he's accused of escaping with the help of prison official Vicky White. Police say she fatally shot herself at the end of a chase in southern Indiana. Newly released dash cam and body cam video, they show the moments after the chase ended as officers arrested Casey White and tried to pull Vicky White from the car. The crash ended an 11-day manhunt spanning several states and hundreds of tips.
A lot of the questions we had may never be answered now. The main question was, for Vicky is being the kind of employee she'd been for all those years, what in the world possessed her to pull a stunt like this? The only conclusion I guess we can come to at this point is just a jailhouse romance.
Police think the couple had been in Evansville since at least May 2nd. Casey White is set to go on trial for the 2015 murder in June, though his attorneys could request more time. The mother of former IU football player Chris Beatty is suing the city of Indianapolis for his death during the 2020 downtown riots. Deborah Cooper's wrongful death claim names Mayor Joe Hogsett, IMPD Chief Randall Taylor, and the department as defendants. Cooper argues that the city violated Beatty's 14th Amendment rights and took no action to prevent the violence that ultimately led to her son's death. Police say Beatty was shot and killed while trying to help someone who was being robbed during the riots. 3 people are charged in Beatty's murder. Marion County health leaders tell ITMate a CDC study on gun deaths is spot on for what's happening in Indianapolis. The CDC study released yesterday shows homicides involving guns jumped by 35% in 2020 nationwide. That's the highest in 25 years. The agency says the stressors of the pandemic likely contributed to the rise in violence. Indianapolis set a record number of homicides in 2020 and 2021. Marion County Public Health Department Director Dr. Virginia Kane urges the city to treat gun violence as a public health problem.
Emergency for us, because as far as I'm concerned, 1 youth who dies is too many. And that's my perception. 1 youth unnecessarily that dies, as far as I'm concerned, is a crisis.
Kane says the city is making improvements, but issues like inflation will continue to contribute to the violence. And local faith leaders want several IMPD officers fired and charged after a man died in custody. We first reported Herman Whitfield III's death last month. We talked about it here on the podcast and have covered it extensively. IMPD says Whitfield's father told officers that his son was in a state of psychosis, and an officer ended up using his taser twice to subdue him. Whitfield was then unresponsive and died. Faith in Indiana, an Indianapolis clergy group, says IMPD's model for responding to mental health crises needs to change.
Who are you supposed to call when you can't call the police for help? It's a sad day in our city when a family says, you know what, I need to call the ambulance and not the police because I'm fearful that the police will kill my son. And that is exactly what has happened.
Clergy members say they want their demands met by next summer. The officers involved are on administrative leave, and IMPD says it will release the officer's body camera video. IMPD says Whitfield's death is still under investigation. The department says in a statement, IMPD has a responsibility to our officers, Mr. Whitfield's family, and the community to only draw conclusions once all information regarding the investigation has been presented to the chief and the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. The trucking industry is urging the White House to amp up domestic oil production. Diesel is averaging $5.55 a gallon, according to AAA. We spoke with a local driver about the impact, both long-term and short-term. He says the extra cost of carrying goods will make them more expensive.
Probably going to end up having to raise our prices, for our jobs we do. Each job we do is billed individually, different customers and stuff like that. So.
And gasoline prices keep climbing. Gas Buddy puts the current national average at $4.40 a gallon. That's 4 cents more expensive than yesterday. Indiana's average is $4.41. And this morning, the government released inflation numbers showing that inflation slowed in April after 7 months of relentless gains. A tentative sign that price increases may be peaking while still imposing a financial strain on American households. Consumer prices jumped 8.3% last month from 12 months earlier. That's what the Labor Department said this morning. That was below the 8.5% year-over-year surge in March, which was the highest rate since 1981. Still, 8.3% is huge. And President Biden called inflation the number one problem facing American families. He spoke yesterday on his plan to lower energy and prescription drug prices, raise taxes on corporations, and ease supply chain bottlenecks.
My plan is to lower everyday costs for hardworking Americans and lower the deficit by asking large corporations and the wealthiest Americans to not engage in price gouging and to pay their fair share in taxes.
Biden blamed the pandemic and Russia's invasion of Ukraine for the struggling economy. Indiana Republican Senator Mike Braun blames President Biden for the inflation crisis. He sent News8 a statement reading, President Biden controls the House, Senate, and White House, and yet spent his speech today, meaning yesterday, blaming anybody but himself for his inflation crisis. His plan is to spend us out of a problem he spent us into. And new in the war in Ukraine, the Senate will now consider a plan to send $40 billion in aid to Ukraine. Indiana Congressman Andre Carson presided over the vote as the House passed it last night. The bill allocates billions for weapons, training, and intelligence support. There's also money for refugee assistance, public health, and medical support. Indiana Attorney General Todd Rokita is standing by his office's policy related to abortion. Todd Rokita says the Supreme Court draft opinion signaling an overturn of Roe v. Wade will not change his policy. He says he plans to enforce the High Court's final ruling like any other and would not take action unless lawmakers pass new laws. State GOP leaders have asked Governor Holcomb to call a special session if Roe v. Wade is overturned. Rokita says the draft opinion would not immediately change abortion laws.
The Supreme Court's only saying that the constitutionality of the right to an abortion in our Constitution is not there. And so the decision on when life begins and when to enforce a murder statute, basically, falls back to the state.
He also says his office would not prosecute women who get an out-of-state abortion if the state does pass stricter laws. A recent study shows a sharp increase in alcohol-related deaths since the start of the pandemic. A local treatment advocate is speaking about the surge. Alcohol-related deaths jumped more than 25% between 2019 and 2020. That's according to the National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism. They published a graph showing that sharp spike for 2020. Years before, the annual increase was usually around 2%. The numbers are still coming in for 2021, but the study's lead author told the Washington Post he expects the numbers to be even higher for that year. Health experts say that alcohol abuse is a growing problem even as the pandemic wanes. Treatment advocates at ARC Behavioral Health are seeing more people realize they have a substance abuse issue now since things are getting back to normal and people are back at work or just out in public.
People kind of starting to get back to their normal lives. That drinking, those drinking habits, really can't continue. So what we've seen is that, people are now more so than ever, people are checking into treatment because, they can't continue, to drink at home throughout the day.
Treatment advocates say everyone should watch their drinking habits. Pay attention to if you constantly feel like you need alcohol. Moderate drinking is classified as 1 drink for women or 2 drinks for men in a single day. Health experts say you can learn to live without alcohol, try meditation and healthy eating, getting exercise, or going outside more. There are also resources all over the country, including meetings and therapy. The study says deaths involving alcohol reflect the hidden tolls of the pandemic, and we should all be more aware. A new report shows more than 14 million people could lose health insurance in a matter of months. That's if the Medicaid policy expires. The Kaiser Family Foundation reports a 25% increase in Medicaid enrollment during the pandemic. Researchers think the boost is due to increased federal funding to states that agreed to keep people continuously enrolled instead of unenrolling them if they no longer met eligibility requirements. That's set to end in August. A decision on the issue is expected later this month. And today, the start of a new campaign to build a playground honoring a student killed while crossing the street from school. A car hit Hannah Crutchfield, her mother, and a crossing guard on Washington Street in September here in Indianapolis. People behind the project say if they raise $50,000 through crowdfunding, they'll get a matching grant through the Indiana Housing and Community Development Authority. The group wants to transform the playground at George Julian School 57 in Irvington. The plans call for the playground to be accessible for children with physical limitations. And today, Indigo is launching a new project to make bus rides more equitable and convenient in Southeast Indianapolis. A new software called Indigo Connect is now available. It allows riders to book a ride in a private car through a smartphone app or by calling a phone number. Those rides will be $1.75 per trip or less. The app matches passengers heading in the same direction together into a single vehicle. Riders can book rides to places like the University of Indianapolis, grocery stores, and Fountain Square Red Line stations. Buccaneers quarterback Tom Brady has a job once he finally decides to retire from the NFL. Fox Sports announced yesterday the 7-time Super Bowl champion will be its lead NFL analyst when Brady's playing career ends. Fox says Brady signed a 10-year, $375 million deal. Brady confirmed the news on social media, but says there's still a lot of unfinished business on the field. A fan favorite former driver will lead the field of this year's Indianapolis 500. Sarah Fisher is taking the wheel of the pace car. She'll drive the Corvette Z06 unveiled at the track Tuesday. It's a 70th anniversary edition with red and black accents. Boy, does she look good. Fisher raced in the 509 times, including 2002, when she set a record for fastest qualifying run for a female driver at more than 229 miles an hour. The pace car won't go quite that fast.
It's definitely much more laid back to drive the pace car than it is to be in the field. A lot less stress. So still a lot of fun and has a special place in my heart to be here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Fisher has stayed very close to the sport since she retired, including several races as a team owner and as the founder of Speedway Indoor Karting, just south of IMS.
There's a passenger flying a plane that's not a pilot, and the pilot's incapacitated.
And finally, an air traffic controller explains a crisis in the skies. It happened early yesterday afternoon over Palm Beach, Florida. In the air, a passenger was at the controls of a small private plane. On the ground, Robert Morgan talked him safely down. Morgan is also a flight instructor. He says he'd never flown the specific model that was in peril, so he used a picture of the cockpit for reference.
I knew the plane's flying like any other plane. I just had to keep them calm, point them to the runway, and just tell them how to reduce the power so they could descend to land.
Video from the ground shows a safe landing of the plane. Now, Morgan and the passenger turned pilot met on the tarmac for a hug after. Morgan says the man was eager to get home to see his wife, who is also pregnant. This has been your News 8 Daily 8 for Wish TV. I'm Kylie Conway. Online at wishtv.com and follow us on Facebook when you search Wish TV.
This is the News 8 Daily 8 podcast with Wish TV's Kylie Conway. A Wish TV News 8 update on demand for even more on demand and on the go. Connect with Wish TV on Facebook at wishtv.com and on the free Wish TV mobile app. Thank you for listening. And be sure to like, subscribe, and follow this podcast for updates every weekday morning on the All Indiana Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcast.